Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues, good morning and welcome to the European Energy Network event on energy agency and renewable energy communities, a new path for energy decentralization, where we bring together ENR member agencies and relevant stakeholders led by ENR on the implementation status energy communities across 13 countries and how it can be leveraged for a faster and more impactful energy. To welcome you to the event, we call on stage the for Environment and Energy, João Galamba.
Good morning. First of all, I would like to thank the invitation of the European Energy Network for this intervention by occasion of the presentation of an important study on energy decentralization, a theme which is very dear to the Portuguese government. Portugal imports all the fossil fuels it consumes. As such, we have an added responsibility to be ambitious in decarbonizing the economy. We need to replace imports of energy by endogenous renewable resources and improved efficiency. To do so, we set the goal of optimizing and maximizing the incorporation of renewable energy sources in final consumption of energy by 2030. To get there, among other initiatives, we have to double the installed capacity of renewable primary sources so that at least 80% of our electricity comes from renewables by 2025-26. The decarbonization of society, and in particular the energy transition, requires institutional, legal, and regulatory changes, allowing the configuration of new markets, including capacity and flexibility markets, and new products, but also the participation of consumers through a more active role as energy consumers and producers. A more informed citizen will make better, more efficient, and sustainable choices, as they will be placed at the center of decision. We will thus have a more active citizenship in the transition to a carbon-neutral society, available to participate in the much-needed structural changes. Simultaneously, planning of electricity grids have to incorporate the dynamic management and constrain injection capacity while integrating larger volumes of energy in a decentralized logic. We are currently working with the DSO and the TSO to find the proper conditions under which if there is no reverse flow from the distribution grid to the transport grid, the full capacity available in the distribution grid will be available for, namely, energy communities.
Now, as we are going through these really challenging times, and already before we know well, energy is a day-to-day need, and we need to go from a situation where consumers were just the passive actors of where their role was mainly to pay the energy bills at the end of the month, to make consumers the real active players of the energy system, actively shaping the system. It's extremely important to have consumers as the ones embracing and delivering the European Green Deal, when we're talking about decarbonization of the energy system, when we're talking about our vision for 2050 to become the first climate neutral continent in the world. Now, as we go through a war in Ukraine and the related energy crisis, it's triggered the high energy bills that are coming from it for consumers, really putting into question people's ability to access energy, to pay for energy. We, on the Commission side, with the member states in the Council, and we just met yesterday again with the energy ministers, where the Secretary of State João Galamba represented Portugal. We have been putting forward a number of measures precisely to address these exceptional circumstances. It is clear that we are in a need not just to pursue the decarbonization of the energy system, but really to accelerate it. It's clear that we need to phase out our need for fossil fuels. We need to engage with alternative suppliers, and we need to reduce demand and indeed to address the high energy prices. And as said, in these circumstances, in this context, citizens, who are the consumers, play a very important role. It is extremely important that more and more consumers are also able to produce at least part of their energy, to share it with others as prosumers, or indeed as part of what is the subject of our meeting today, as part of an energy community, in which should allow also access to cheaper energy from the grid when consuming electricity at including at peak times. So energy communities really offer an incredible means for citizens, municipalities, and small businesses to join forces and invest together in local clean energy production and supply. And these communities can also help mobilizing private capital and increase public acceptance of the renewable sources of energy by creating very tangible local benefits and ownership. Energy communities can provide direct benefits to citizens, such as increasing energy efficiency, lowering the electricity bills, reducing carbon emission, as well as, and very importantly, supporting the local economy and creating local job opportunities. So we are pleased to see that there are over 8,000 collective action initiatives already today in Europe. And in this context, let me refer to some examples of EU-funded projects that have caught my attention and that show that we're not speaking about theory, that these are really very real opportunities. So, for instance, in Belgium, where I live, there are renewable energy solutions for urban communities based on circular economy policies. And it's all about maximizing sustainable energy, conversion of heritage, and the circular economy. Let me also mention an example of advancement of energy communities in Portugal. Clean Watts inaugurated in Portugal the first renewable energy community in a small town called Miranda do Douro. And according to the reports we are getting, they are on track to originate and manage more than 100 energy communities across Portugal for an aggregated capacity of over 40 megawatt solar PV. So it's really tangible, and very pleased to see how these projects are being developed and implemented. Now, what we see at the same time is that energy communities often lack the technical expertise and the financial resources to navigate in this still new energy landscape. And we are looking into that from the Commission side and trying to really tackle the various challenges. And clearly, one of them is also having an adequate legislative framework. The right legislation needs to be in place. And in this sense, we already have a number of legislation in force, which foresees renewable energy communities and where they are recognized as market actors empowered to operate on all relevant energy markets and with the necessary enabling conditions. We are following up very closely on the implementation of this legislation, notably in the Renewables Directive, which is being revised, but there are provisions which are in force. And it's also part of the Electricity Market Directive. And our objective is to further allow for the expansion of this kind of communities and to really seize its potential. Under the legislation which is currently being negotiated, and it's called under the jargon Fit for 55 package, we have proposed to recognize energy communities as key actors in mainstreaming renewable energy into facilitating building renovations. So that's one element. There's also the gas decarbonization package, which is currently being discussed and negotiated in the Council, in the European Parliament. And the idea here is to extend the possibility also to renewable energy communities in the gas sector, with the purpose of greening gas supply through the injection of biomethane on the gas grid. So these are all provisions in legislation which are aimed at facilitating the rolling out of renewable energy communities. In parallel, we are identifying best practices. I just mentioned two very concrete examples, and we are providing guidance and technical assistance to policymakers and community energy projects, so that we can all learn from each other, and really gathering a lot of experience from this European financed projects. So clearly, it is important to remove the barriers to active participation of consumers in the energy market. It needs to be easier for citizens. In the Repower EU, we have introduced the possibility to further facilitate the development of energy communities and renewable energy self-consumers, notably in the solar energy strategy. With these initiatives, we are really calling on member states to take the measures to adapt the administrative requirements to what is still a non-professional character of energy communities, to provide capacity building support, and to really ensure simplified access to the grid. And clearly, studies like the one being presented today contribute to facilitating the implementation of these important communities throughout the EU. So to conclude, a strong appeal to recognize energy communities much more widely by all by policymakers across all levels of governance, starting with us in the EU, but then at national, local, and community level. We do see a momentum building up. Now it's the moment to seize to the opportunity to make these communities a true European success story. So I would also encourage the study and your discussions today, and I will try to facilitate it also on our side in the European Commission. Thank you very much, and wish you a very good morning of discussions.
Thank you, Ms. Paula Pinho, for the outlook on the European policy in this critical area. We now move to the presentation of the ENR-led study on renewable energy communities and the current and prospective role of national energy agencies can play in this field. To present the study findings, please welcome the Director of Programs and Initiatives of ADENE, the Portuguese Energy Agency, Manuel Casquiço.
Good morning. First to say thank you to all that are here, and also the colleagues that are attending on the online platform. So my name is Manuel Casquiço. I will make the presentation about the study that we developed about the agencies and the role towards the implementation on renewable energy communities, a new path for energy decentralization. So the idea is to understand how energy communities and of course energy agencies can contribute for the energy production decentralization. So of course, we have the help of several energy agencies from the ENER network. And of course, I want to thank you to all these energy agencies that contribute to the study. I will have a slide with a specific detail, with a specific detail of each one of the energy agencies. And of course, I want to thank you to all the team from ADENE, my colleague Fernando Oliveira, that of course allocated a lot of time and effort to develop this study. And of course, my colleagues from the International Relations Department that also helped us, of course, in development of the study, but also in the dissemination and also in the preparation of this event. So, first I will talk about the framework and the methodology that we have developed, just for you to understand how we collected the information. So, the basis of sorry, just a little bit of technical issue. Sorry for that. But I was saying that the basis for this study was the clean energy package. So to understand how the transposition of the energy directives was made in the different countries, and how this transposition and effectively the legislation in each country helped in the implementation, and how it's going, the implementation of renewable energy communities. So we know that the production of electricity based on renewable energy it's increasing, so since 2004. And what is expected is that renewable energy communities can play a role to increase this energy production and play a big part on the energy transition also. So what we have defined as objectives of the study, we have defined 5 different objectives. So first, of course, it's to see how the transposition is going, how the legislation is being adapted for each country. Also to understand what are the actions so that we can leverage the investment and, of course, dissemination and awareness in renewable energy communities for the implementation of renewable energy communities. Also to identify the current obstacles, for example, on the grid. So we know that there are several challenges that we have to tackle regarding the grid, and also to identify solutions for that obstacle, so to pass these barriers. And of course, to identify good practices and best cases that we can, of course, identify to see their characteristics and to see if it's possible to implement them in different countries with similar conditions. So basically, to identify some of the main characteristics of these best cases to see how we can use them as good practices. And finally, to evaluate what is the role of the different energy agencies, what they are doing at the moment, and what can be also replicated by the other energy agencies. So it's also very important to understand what can be done regarding the energy agencies. So these are the participants. So of course, we have had the help of these 13 energy agencies that helped us with some valuable insights to understand how the renewable energy communities are being implemented in their countries. You can see in the right, so what is the geographical distribution. And basically, what we can see is that, of course, it's not easy. Renewable energy communities are not still a reality, and of course, across Europe. So what we have done is to have done the study in 2 different phases, just to know that this information will be available when we deploy the study. So it will be available if you want to understand, if you want to see more information about the study. So we have basically a first questionnaire where we receive the information, some of the details, and the second one is a project fact sheet where we collected what is the best cases, so for us to identify what is the added value of the projects that are already implemented. And some are still not implemented, but are in the phases of the implementation. So what are the key findings? Basically, we divided the key findings in 4 different areas. So first, legislation. As I said before, it's very important for us to understand how the transposition is going. So transposition and also adoption. So just mainly characteristics, what is a renewable energy community, some main characteristics. Also support actions, to understand what are the main actions that are being made for the implementation of renewable energy communities. Also the barriers, so to understand what are the barriers, the blocks for the implementation of renewable energy communities. And also to understand what we can do to pass this problem. And of course, what is the role of energy agencies, the current role and activities of the energy agencies regarding this matter. So basically, the information that you can see here is that the majority of the countries already have transposed legislation. So this legislation should be transposed until 2020, but we know that there are some issues in some of the countries, but the majority already have implemented. And one of the things that we see there also on the right, it's that despite not having transposed legislation, they have legislation regarding the citizens' communities, not renewable energy communities, but citizen communities. So they have specific legislation, not for this purpose, but with a wider scope. One of the important aspects is the definition. So it's one of the things also here in Portugal that a lot of colleagues ask us, what is the difference, for example, between a renewable energy community and a collective self-consumption? So, but basically what we see is that the definition is similar across the different countries. So basically the renewable energy community is a legal entity, it's open and voluntary of the participation. and it's supposed to have social benefits. It's his main goal. And another thing that we see, it's of course, it's that the focus is on energy production. We're going to see after, but also in the share of energy, and also to sell the excess of energy that it's produced. So basically, this is the definition that is general for the majority of the countries. So another two aspects that we try to understand is, so who can be a member of this renewable energy community? So what we see, there's no limitations, only in one of the countries. What we see is that, for example, energy suppliers or retailers cannot be part of these energy communities. But in the majority of the cases, we can see that there's no limitations on the participation. That's it. It's a good thing, because, of course, we have different sectors and we have mix of different sectors in the renewable energy communities. And we also see that for the management, it's one of the things, so who can manage these renewable energy communities? Because we have the example, and we have the case in Portugal, and we want to understand what is being done in the different countries. What we see is something is similar. So in the majority of the cases, it can be the members, of course, but also a third party as a service. So it's what is one of the main aspects of this slide. So another thing that we try to understand is what kind of services. So it's one of the differences also. As I said before, when we are trying to explain what are the differences between the self-consumption and renewable energy communities, one of the things that the majority of the people ask us is, oh, well, what are the services, what we can do? So one of the things that we see, of course, is energy production and sharing, but also different types of energy services as, for example, the electric vehicles charging. It's one of the things that one of the majority also of things that it's being also done. Another important aspect, it's what we call the licensing process. So it's something that we know that it's in the majority of the cases that you can see there. So we see three different types of licensing process. In one of the cases, it's not clear. So for example, the transposition is made, but you don't have the processes to make the licensing. So it's open, it's not defined, they are still defining. In other countries, we see that it's only a simplified process. So they have, the grid have capacity, so they make like a notification for the central authority, and they can, of course, go ahead with the project. But finally, what we can see, it's in the majority of the countries where you see it's a complex process, it's a bureaucratic process in the majority of the countries, because we have more than one entity, so several entities that the project have to pass. They have to analyze and to give okay to go ahead. And of course, we know that we have other constraints, as we see in the slide. We have grid constraints, that the grid don't have the capacity, and the time from of course, the authorities to analyze the processes takes too long. So it's also a problem. Other important aspects that we try to define is what we call the support instruments. So what are the support instruments at the national level in the different countries that we have? So to implement, so to pass these barriers that we have, to implement the renewable energy community. So we have two major types, what we call economic type. And in this economic type, where we're talking, it's about incentives for the national governments. So we're talking about green taxes, we're talking about subsidies, financial incentives. Basically, it's the majority of the incentives that we see. Another important aspect, it's the technical support. So it's one of the things that is very mentioned, it's the need to have technical support for the different stakeholders. So what we see is that in some countries already have, for example, one-stop shop. It's one place where stakeholders can go and promoters can go and make all the process, but it's very few countries that have that kind of one-stop shops. This is one of the problems. Of course, what we call the help desks or contact centers, help guides, so it's something that already it's being developed. But what we see, it's one of the things, of course, that one of complaints of the different countries, is that it's not yet satisfactory. So we have these cases, we have this documentation, but legislation is still recent, and we know that it's difficult to implement because we have a centralized system in the majority of the countries, and when we are talking about a distributed system or decentralized system, it's also, of course, a problem. And of course, another thing that we see is that we are talking about sometimes single actions, not a concerted action at a national level to implement renewable energy communities. So, for example, we have financial mechanisms, but we don't have the other aspects. So, for example, the legislation, it's not simplified. So, there's something that must be done, of course, in a collective effort. It's one of the things that we also checked. Regarding the barriers, we divide it into 4 different areas, 4 different type of barriers. You can see that they are the distribution. We are going to see now in details each one of these barriers. So the first one, it's legislation. So the ones that are highlighted, it's the ones that are most common to the different countries. So the first one, it's of course legislation. So it's not only to be simplified, it's because it's complex. The majority of the people don't understand what is legislation, what is the different aspects, what are the requirements. So it's something that the majority of the countries have to work on. Another important aspect, it's of course one of the things that I already mentioned, it's the bureaucratic process, the length of the process, so it takes too long. And of course, the licensing authorities must work on that to try to see if it's possible to have processes that are faster to implement, and it attracts investors. So it's of course one of the problems. And finally, that's not the most common, but also in some of countries, some of the colleagues refer that the type of services they are not clear. For example, they don't define what are the services that must be provided by renewable energy communities, and they don't know what they can do. So what are the scope of the renewable energy communities, where they can go. So it's one of the things also. So another important aspect is the organizational barriers. So first one, this is the major question, I think, also in the majority of the countries. In Portugal, it's the same. It's how do I start? So I want to do energy community. How do I start? Where I go to? What I have to do? So it's one of the things that, of course, must be explained. And I think the majority of the countries are already trying to work on that. So another one is to find the energy community. So I want to participate in the energy community. Where do I go to? So I don't know. I want to participate where I can find information. So it's spread across websites, across a lot of information. So it's not difficult. So another aspect, it's information on the network. It's, for example, to have data to understand what is the capacity of the network, and to have data available to everyone to understand where a renewable energy community also can be made. The fourth one is the one-stop shop. It's what we call a web platform to go where I can go and take care of all the business. So, and from A to Z, it's of course, one of the problems. And it's one of the things that it's more mentioned. So they have to go to one place. And we have another thing that we try to understand, it's the legal aspects, because we know to have to implement a renewable energy community, you have to create a legal entity, and the majority don't understand how they can do it. They have to have it's of course an expensive process, and it takes also too long, so it's something that must also be clarified. Another thing it's important, it's the lack of awareness, so it's very difficult to have information about renewable energy communities. We know that legislation is recent, but it's also something that it's missing in some of the countries. Again, the length of the processes, it takes too long, and of course it's not possible to build or to do renewable energy communities in all the country, because sometimes the grid have technological aspects and constraints. It's not possible to do. Other important aspects is the economic barriers. So sometimes there's lack of competitive and transparent energy tariffs. Majority of people don't understand how energy tariffs work, how they are built. So it's something that is also very difficult to understand. We know that sometimes people don't even understand how to read the invoice, the electricity bill. Another important aspect is the high cost of storage. We know that it's something that it can increase the cost of the project, but it's something that, of course, it's being looked at in the innovation. It's something that can play a huge role here. Another important aspect is what I can gain with the participation in a renewable energy community. So it's something that is, of course, quite mentioned also. And of course, also the penalization on market premium subsidy electricity generated by renewable energy communities. So sometimes the energy that is produced, sometimes in some cases, it's not clear the added value. So another problem is it's the grid access costs, the costs to access the grids, lack of transparency. And of course also some financing investment problems, and also the investments on the grid by the distributed system operator. It's also something that it's quite mentioned. Technological barriers, one of the things that it's quite mentioned also, it's the supply of equipment and installers. So one of the things that the country said that it's difficult to have the installers for all this demand that it's working at, that is available right now. What we call also communication material availability, need of adaptation of IT. So IT processes must be, of course, one of the key issues here, automatized. So it's possible to have information, automatic information. It's something that is quite important. And also the smart meters and also the congestion of the grids, the capacity of the grids is also one of the things that is also mentioned. Regarding the role of the energy agencies at the moment, so one of the things that we see here is that the key, it's dissemination and communication. So we have already 9 of the 13 energy agencies with, for example, departments, and they have teams with they have capabilities, and they are working on energy communities. But of course, we have work to do, and in the end, we'll have some slides with insights of the work that energy agencies can do at a national level. So we have several case studies. So we identified 36 case studies in these countries that you can see there. So one of the things that it's important, it's the age, if we can see. So the oldest case, we have 12 years of existence. So it's something that it's quite recent. And it was not easy to find this case study. So we know that we have a lot of initiatives working, but to have cases of renewable energy communities and the projects in this area, it's not easy. So you can see that even 50% of these case studies were in countries that don't have specific legislation about this matter. So what we have found, it's one of the things that, well, what is the dimension of this energy community? So what is the number of members? So as you can see there, the majority of these projects are small projects, but sometimes with high capacity. But the maximum numbers you can see there are 600 members. And another important aspect that, of course, also in Portugal we have, it's, well, I'm doing a renewable energy community, what do I have to create? What is the legal entity that I have to create? As you can see there, 50% are cooperatives and also non-profit associations after. So it's something, and foundations. So it's quite interesting to see how they are being created at the different countries. So another important aspect, it's what are the drivers. So it's one of the things, so what I can gain with the renewable energy communities? It's one of the things, what can I gain? So as you can see, the majority, of course, we see that, well, it's sustainability. So sustainability, it's one of the key. But of course, despite the social motivation on the definition that we see before, financial motives, of course, it's one of the top. So I only participate if I have financial benefits. So it's one of course, it's one of the keys. So it's, of course, it's important also. Another important, it's the services that are provided. As I said before, sometimes it's not clear. Renewable energy communities don't understand what are the added value, or the promoters of renewable energy communities. I will make collective self-consumption, but we can see here some of the benefits that we have, of course, with the implementation of the renewable energy communities. As we can also see there, it's the majority of the systems, or of course of the sources. We are talking about solar energy that represents the majority of this added value in the communities. So another important aspect, it's what we call the perceived socio-economic benefits. It's one of the things that we also in Portugal, we are trying to communicate, and it's something that is similar across the different members in different countries. So it's the sense of ownership of the system. We are the participation in the energy transition. It's something that it's quite important for the majority of people. Of course, the low cost of energy bills is also some of the things that, of course, the majority mention. And the sense of what we call the community. So the local value, it's also very important. And the social cohesion of that specific area of the community, it's something that, of course, it's quite important also. So in the end, what we are trying to see, so this can be replicated. We can use these case studies at other places. So what are the main characteristics that these case studies have that we can try to implement them in other countries? So what we see is that the majority of case studies are residential sectors, so 76%. And one of the important things is the second line there. So it's the participation of municipalities. So what we're seeing here is that in the majority of the countries, the key is also the participation of municipalities. So they are a driver, they are, of course, one of the drivers and, of course, one of the key actors of the renewable energy communities. And, of course, we have the participation. So it's, I think, the main, it's the last sentence that we can see that energy communities may have a wide application. So we have the participation of different sectors, different areas. So we can see we have several benefits here in the implementation of renewable energy communities. So, and what are the recommendations? So in the end, we have several recommendations based on the insights that we have in the analysis that we have made. What we have seen is, so we have what we call the actionable recommendations. And in the end, we have what we call the barriers. So we have identified some actions for the barriers, and we have some detail about that. But one of the things that we see, it's of course the governments, so the participation, and we see from the Secretary of State of Energy that of course the governments must play also a key role here for the simplification, the grid connections as we see, and also we are trying, for example, here in Portugal, we're trying to work on that. It's something that's quite important. And also an important, it's what we call the national framework. So we have like a national plan for the renewable energy communities, for everyone to be aboard, to everyone to see what is the added value to participate in these renewable energy communities. Simplification, I think simplification is also one of the important things here. So we have to simplify procedures. We have to have online platforms. We have to have basically for all the promoters and stakeholders to know where they have to go to make the renewable energy communities. We also have to adequate finance, of course, for the investments. We know that banks also, but also financial incentives from the government is also very important. Another important aspect, it's one of the keys also here, and we know that it's very difficult. It's to ensure that vulnerable energy poor citizens can also participate in renewable energy communities. It's the no one left behind policy, okay? It's something that we also see in the majority of the countries. And of course we have to put it there, but we think that we can have, of course, a more visible and proactive role in the promotion of these communities also. Regarding the barriers, so we have specific detail. We have 4 different types of barriers that we have identified. And we have some what we call actions that we also think that can be. Sorry for the text, a lot of text, but we think it's important to have these key sentences on the slides for you to understand what are the added values. So, first, of course, it's the qualification and legislation. Of course, they have to be. We know that this is complex. It's not easy to have simplified procedures, but we have to try it. Okay. So, for example, here in Portugal, we have developed a guide specific for legislation for projects until 1 megawatt. So it's also that it's very important. I think it's an added value. Regarding what we call behavioral organizational barriers, what we are talking about, it's public awareness campaigns and information, more communication to everyone, to different stakeholders. Communication strategy, of course, it's needed to have communication strategies. Something that some of the agencies are also working in what we call the templates and models that can be used by different stakeholders, for example, for their contracts, their tenders, to make, of course, to build the renewable energy communities. Online tools, so we have online platforms to help everyone that try to understand the added value of communities and, of course, to implement and to do the projects. Also, the response time, of course, the licensing process is one of the problems here. Also, the grids, so the capacity of the grids, to have capacity investment on the grids, and also the creation of support structures. So where I can go to if I have doubts, if I have issues, where I can talk to, it's one of the things here also that is mentioned. Regarding the economic barriers, and also in the end, the technological barriers. So what we have to do is, of course, financial support. So it's very important in this stage, in these early stages after the legislation, to have financial mechanisms. For example, tariff calculator for consumers to know and also stakeholders to know what is the added value or what I can gain with the participation. Reduction of taxes is, if possible, of course, the green taxes, so it's also very important. The cost of storage, as I said before, innovation is quite important, and we know it is very important. And of course, what we call the business models privilege, some different business models, for example, with the vulnerable stakeholders and vulnerable citizens that can participate and also have added value. Another important aspect is the technological barriers, so adaptation of the legislation. So, for example, the smart meters and the information and awareness, it's also about this information, and of course, to have added value on data. IT solution is also a key here, to be possible, of course, to share the information in real time. It's also very important. Grids capacity, again, of course, have the capacity of the grids to have, of course, the investments needed to absorb all this energy that is produced by renewable energy communities and also the decentralization of self-consumption. And of course, what we call the complementarity between different renewable energy sources, it's also very important. So, regarding the role of energy agencies, it's of course, one of the main aspects of our study is to identify how we can help. So, how energy agencies at the different levels can help to implementation. So what we see, of course, it's work on dissemination. As I said before, it's one of the things that is already being done, but we think that we can give an added value and make more, of course, in the different countries. Another important aspect is the capacity, training and qualification of stakeholders. It's very important. So stakeholders, public stakeholders, private stakeholders, they see the need to have training for their professionals, of course. Another important aspect is the identification of good practices. So one of the things as we have done in this study is to identify what are the good practices, what are the examples that we have in the different countries, and try to replicate them, use them as a basis, as a good example to implement with the added value of the renewable energy communities. Also the cooperation with other entities. So what we see that, of course, energy agencies, they have the scope of activity well defined, but in some of the cases, some of the energy agencies can do also a different kind of work, helping, for example, the licensing authorities and also the district system operators, municipalities on the implementation of these communities, and also the helping in design of financial support schemes. For example, at the national level, governments try to define these schemes and to help, because in some cases, energy agencies know the market, knows the actors, and know how to build these financial incentives. They have experience and very highly trained professionals. And finally, what we are talking about, it's also to contribute to the network. So energy agencies can also contribute for the network, as we are seeing here, the ENER network. It's, of course, a very important tool. Use the ENER network as a privilege mechanism also to disseminate and to, of course, to talk each other, make network to understand what we can do better. So what the others are doing that I can do, of course, in my country. Enough, of course, to try to develop a national strategy. So it's very important. As I said before, it's one of the things. So we have single measures at the national level, but we don't need only single measures. We also need central measures, what we call a plan. We have all to do a collective effort to go and implement these communities. So that's the only way we can do it. Finally, it's the last slides, I promise. We have the conclusions. So basically, we think that renewable energy communities can bring a positive, it's a positive asset, okay, for the energy production, and of course to reduce the dependency on fossil fuels that we know that it's an issue, of course, across Europe at this moment. Legislation, we have to simplify, of course. We have to try to simplify. We know that it's not easy, but we try to simplify or work in different documents to try to help. Another important process is the approval process, so the licensing process, to be faster. And if it's possible to be, in more cases, what we call the automatic process. The grids don't have capacity. We know that we have to work on the grids. So, but we know that the ESO and, of course, the national entity is working on that. National actors are working at that in Portugal. In other countries, they are also working on that. Energy storage, as I said before, and the need for general technical support. And finally, we think the energy agencies can play a huge role here in the dissemination, support, and also in the capacity, because many of us have already training entities, and it's something that we do on a daily basis, the training of professionals in this area. And I promise this is the last one. You can find this report. We will make it available on the website of the ENER network. We invite you, of course. I think we will receive a notification when the report will be available. And of course, we invite you, everyone, to see the report, see the details. And you have some aspects, you can talk to us. And if we see, well, if you see something that can be, of course, improved, talk to us. And thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel, for a great kickoff and for the triggers that will now help our discussion. We now move to our first panel on the impacts and potential of renewable energy communities in the context of the current energy crisis. Please welcome on stage our moderator again, Manuel Casquiço from the Portuguese Energy Agency, ADENE, and our distinguished guests from the European Energy Network member agencies, from the Austrian Energy Agency, the head of EU and international projects, from the Energy Saving Trust in the United Kingdom, joining us online, the head of the Energy Saving Trust Foundation, Graham Ayling. From the Institute for the Diversification and Saving of Energy of Spain, responsible for energy communities, Sara de la Serna. And also joining us online from the Netherlands Enterprise Agency, RVO, the Senior Project Manager Otto Bernsen. We will start with a brief presentation from our speakers, starting with Leonardo Barreto. You want to use the pointer, Leonardo? It's in the
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be here. Bon dia. Yesterday when I arrived, I saw Lisbon from the plane. It was so beautiful to see the water and see the city. I've been here for many, many years ago, and it's a pleasure to be back. I have a few slides. Maybe you can put them on the screen. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Yeah, as Manuel mentioned, there are a number of barriers to energy communities. In some member states, there has not been transposition of the directive yet. In other cases, there are not support schemes, or they are insufficient. Also, some cases, the financial benefits are not clear or are not sufficient for a business case. It's important that communities, citizens, and also local authorities and municipalities understand what are the benefits, financial and non-financial, from energy communities. And also there is lack of cooperation with DSOs in some cases for the connection, which prevent communities from obtaining a connection in due time or is delayed. I'm going to talk about the impacts of the energy crisis on renewable energy communities, basically using the case of Austria. I mean, we have, as Manuel mentioned, we have a one-stop shop, which is the coordination body, who's giving a lot of support to communities. It's been initiated by our ministry. But with the crisis, some conditions change, and the business case has been affected. So why has been affected? One of the reasons is producers may find more attractive to sell to their green electricity support scheme. Some of the temporary subsidies do not include communities fully, and there are some exceptions that were granted to communities now are granted to all households. So it's important, again, to evaluate the business case under these conditions and see which support measures you require. The feed-in tariffs for solar PV with the current crisis were increased. Thank you. 5 minutes, yeah. So what happened is that the green electricity body is paying 52 cents per kilowatt hour for solar PV. That means the producer prefers to sell to the green electricity body than to sell to a community. Before, they could meet in the middle. They could say, okay, the households pay this amount, the producer wants this amount. But now, with this incentive, some communities are starting to loosen their producers. because they can get a better price at the green electricity service. The other issue is that there is a subsidy for electricity costs, which is quite generous from the Austrian government's 2,900 kilowatt hours with a price. I mean, if a household has a price higher than 10 cents, they will get the difference. I mean, if you have 15, then you will 5. If you have 40, you will 30, and above 40, you will still get 30. But the members of energy communities are not included in the subsidy as of yet. Government is working on complementary measures to compensate for this. And also, some charges have been extended. I mean, the renewable electricity charge has been suspended for 2022. Before, there was an exception for energy communities. Now it's an exemption for all households. And also the grid fee deduction for households which are exempt from broadcasting fees. I mean, these are the low-income households. A granted exemption from 75% has been given. And for communities, it is 57% for local communities and 26% for regional renewable energy communities. So these things have changed the business case, which means more support is required to communities. So what can we do? One of the things we can do is to strengthen the role of local authorities. Local authorities are well positioned to support communities. They could, for instance, invest in renewable energy through communities and sell the electricity at full cost without making much profit, but selling to the citizens, to support the citizens, to ensure that the citizens have a kind of rich hedging strategy in the volatility of the price. In this way, the consumers will be more, let's say, more isolated from the price fluctuations. But this requires support, and they require support at the regional level, at the national level, and also the European level. At the European level, there is something, for instance, which is called the European City Facility. It does not include yet seed money or grants for communities. It does for energy efficiency projects, for example, but it will have to be extended to include support for communities. The local authority can play different roles. I'm about to finish, no worries. They can be a policy enabler. They can be also a member of the community. They can be a customer or buyer. They can sell, buy the electricity from the community, or they can be a project facilitator for the community. It's important to give the local authorities training to understand what is the possible role, what are the benefits for them, what are the benefits for the citizens, what are the legal implications of being involved directly or only providing a purpose, and to providing capacity building, because in some cases they don't have enough capacity, enough staff to provide these services to the citizens. So what do you need? You need supportive local enabling frameworks. You need participation models for local authorities, explain to them, trained in what are the consequences, what are the legal and financial risks, what are the legal and financial benefits. You also need to help them to engage the citizens. You have to train them in all these three aspects. You have to help them put in place pilot projects, and then you have to get the lessons learned from these pilot projects and feed them back to the process, to supportive enabling frameworks, to the participation models, and to the citizen engagement strategies. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leonardo. We will now move to our online guest, Graham Ayling from the Energy Saving Trust.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the work that we do at Energy Saving Trust. If we can have the next slide, please. So we're the National Energy Agency for the UK, and we're an independent organisation that works on the climate emergency and just transition. We're best known for our work on home energy, but we also work with SMEs on transport, on community energy and renewables, and also increasingly on kind of access to energy in the global south as well. To give you an idea of our reach, our online tools reach about 2 million people per year, and we reach about 1.4 million with our other campaigns. And we've worked on community energy with energy communities for over 20 years, really. So I've been with the Trust for about 14 years. But before that, I was working for another energy agency that some of you may know, my energy agency, who were bidding in to do community energy activity with Energy Saving Trust managed funds. Can I have the next slide, please? And so the key things that we currently do around supporting renewable energy communities are we manage programs for the Scottish and the Welsh governments, those devolved governments, to support community energy. So the CARES programme in Scotland and the Welsh Government Energy Scheme in Wales. Both of those programmes kind of have similar scope. So they provide a mix of advice and guidance alongside loans and grants to develop programs, so that kind of support the whole journey of an energy community from inception and developing governance structures through to delivering projects and developing a portfolio of projects. Alongside that, those are the two main programs that we run, but alongside that, we've got a number of other programs that are accessible to energy communities, some of our transport programs, the program that I currently work on, Energy Redress, that provides support for people in vulnerable situations and energy poverty, but also provides funds to energy communities on innovation and carbon saving. And we're increasingly trying to introduce some of this stuff into our development activity in the global south as well. And also we get involved with insight and kind of policy advocacy around energy communities. Next slide, please. So to talk a little bit about what the situation is in the UK for energy communities, we have a really strong grassroots movement in the UK, strong community energy sector, probably a few hundred organizations, some of whom are now really well developed social enterprises with multi-mega portfolio of renewables. That has come very much out of a grassroots climate change movement. The UK clearly is going its own way on various aspects of policy. So we're not, to our knowledge, UK government isn't looking to kind of implement the main provisions for energy communities in the Renewable Energy Directive and Electricity Directive. So there isn't at the minute specific legislation on energy communities and local supply in the UK, and this is one of the key uncertainties for us. But there is a lot of activity on innovation. There are some sandbox projects working in a kind of regulatory sandbox, testing out lots of different models for this, some really interesting things going on there. But we don't yet have that kind of clarity on how local energy supply might work. Having said that, obviously, I mentioned earlier the devolved governments in Wales do have strong support programs for energy communities. And in the past, there have been quite a number of different programs UK-wide, but they've tended to be kind of running for 1 to 3 years to do some specific things, and then they end, or they're and sometimes replaced by other things, sometimes not. So kind of feasibility, there was a feasibility fund until recently for England that isn't running now. There've been various challenge funds. So that's kind of been one of the challenges, whereas the Welsh and Scottish government programs have actually been running for about 10 years or so, and they've changed and evolved and adapted, but the broad scope of those programs has been the same for about 10 years, and it's helped to kind of grow the sector in those devolved nations. So next slide. And that's now finished. We no longer have a feed-in tariff in the UK, which has been one of the key challenges for us, really, is particularly in Wales and Scotland, where there's a good support programme, but there's not really the market and the regulatory framework. And with the end of quite a sudden end of feed-in tariff, that's created a lot of challenges for building a viable business model. That's it from me for an introduction. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. Register early for feed-in tariff and have a bit longer to actually implement their project. That's now finished. We no longer have a feed-in tariff in the UK, which has been one of the key challenges for us, really, is particularly in Wales and Scotland, where there's a good support programme, but there's not really the market and the regulatory framework. And with the end of quite a sudden end of feed-in tariff, that's created a lot of challenges for building a viable business model.
Hello, good morning. Thank you very much for inviting IDEE to this event. I'm very pleased to be here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the organization in which I work, IDEE. which is a public business entity that has mainly 3 pillars in which we work. We provide technical support for the energy ministry, for which we are working towards. Then also we are dealing with the management of EU and also national funds, and now the management of next generation EU funds is the fund that is really keeping us busier. And on the third side, we also provide some technical assistance, training, awareness activities. Specifically within the energy communities space, there we go. What we are doing is in the energy implementation, in the policy implementation side, we are providing technical advice to the energy, to the ministry in order to provide the transposition for the Renewable Energy Directive and the Electricity Market Directive, which are still not transposed completely in Spain. We did a public consultation in the 4th quarter of 2020 in relation to get information from different stakeholders in relation to the transposition. And as well, on the Recovery, Transformation and Resilience Plan, there is a specific component, the component C7R3, which is related to the development of energy communities. On the second pillar, on the management of EU funds, specifically, we have 100 million devoted for the promotion of energy communities. And that's the area in which we've been working more really during the last, let's say, year and a half, a couple of years. We got an expression of interest to inform the development of the support framework that we have in place, and we have as well a specific energy community support ecosystem, which I'm going to right now present very high level. Then on the technical assistance trainings as awareness as well, we had a guideline on energy communities that was published some time ago, and as well we had another type of guidelines related with, for example, collective self-consumption, and as well as public presentation of the first round of energy community projects. So these are the results of this expression of interest that I was mentioning, that really highlight what the stakeholders thought at that time in 2021 that an energy community was. We had 450 responses. It was an extremely successful expression of interest with a lot of interest, and we can highlight several aspects. The first aspect is that the projects that came, and I think this is also related with what we've heard today in the different presentations, is that the projects were multi-component or multi-vectored. They had the aspiration to go beyond a solar panel, to have some mobility, electric mobility, some thermal aspects related to that, to energy efficiency types as well. There were some cross-cutting aspects. It was not only a project implementation, it was everything that was before. They wanted to get some training done, they wanted to get some education to the different stakeholders. And third one is a huge diversity that now we can see in the energy communities. Another aspect to highlight is that significantly half of the responses had some aspects related to energy poverty, and the second aspect is that the half of the responses as well were done in small municipalities of less than 5,000 inhabitants. So with these insights, what we did is to create this energy communities ecosystem in order to guide the support program that will happen over the next year in Spain, and it's 3-stage approach. The first one is to learn the concepts of what an energy community is. The second one is related to the planification, to the constitution on a legal entity that we know that is complex, and we've heard about that as an abbreviator before. And finally, on the implementation, on implement, what we call is the third stage, and that's where we've done so far more work, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that now. And as well, we think that it's very important to provide some support mechanisms, some framework in order to have some offices for the promotion of knowledge of the concept of assessment, and as well an experience and knowledge and change network. We've heard about these concepts before, and legal and support templates. These are the results of the 40 million that were awarded within the umbrella of the Next Generation EU plan for energy community projects. What we had was 74 projects. Some of those are actually presented in the report that was today released, 700 measures, and significantly more than 90,000 people participate on those 74 projects. And I finish my presentation here on where we are on the legal aspect. We are lagging behind there, but it's also true that there is a huge amount of knowledge that we are gathering through these pilots that are going to be conducted within the next year, and we really hope that that information will be very valuable to be transposed for the transposition. And then we do have a definition of community renewable energy communities. We do have some specificities highlighted for support mechanisms for renewable energy communities, and as well we had some interesting conclusions coming from that public consultation on which we can elaborate maybe a little bit more. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sara. And now we will move to the Netherlands, to the Netherlands Enterprise Agency, RVO, with the Senior Coordinating Manager, Otto Bern.
Good morning again. Apologies again for the technical issues, and I will skip right to a presentation about RVO, or the Netherlands Enterprise Agency. And I was invited by my colleague Rebecca Leeuwen-Jones to give this presentation. A short introduction. Of course, it's a large agency working for different ministries, part of the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate, and we're a hub, you might say, in all kinds of international networks, and we implement policies. We're very well known for technical support schemes, R&D, but also we have large budgets for deployment, and about that a little bit later. We also monitor and evaluate these programs. This is just an example of that. On the left side you can see budget flows from different programs going to societal challenges. And on the right side, you can see a budget in billions of euros on deployment in so-called SDR instrument, SDE instrument, which is for larger systems. And I think there's already one of the reasons why communities have such a low share in the Netherlands, and I will come to that later. So if you define innovation as going through learning curves, our job is basically to get through these learning curves as fast as possible. And the instruments well known in each country that support them, like net metering or a feed-in tariff indeed, or all kinds of tax incentives. I will try to focus on the institutional learning curves, which are much more difficult, and I'll give a few examples of those. These involve guidelines for law and regulation. There's an example of a handbook we published a few years ago with the University of Amsterdam. Also, as Graham mentioned, regulatory sandboxes. They're basically experiments where small projects get a dispensation from the existing energy law, for example, to exploit their own network, still in collaboration with the grid operators. We also perform innovation system analysis, which is like a 360 view around of the dynamics of the innovation system, and then you can usually also identify bottlenecks. Then we come to supporting local initiatives, municipalities, of course, and in the Netherlands, that's the other picture on the right. We have regional energy strategy regions, and that basically implies that the planning and the implementation of the renewable energy directors are delegated to larger regions, sometimes at the level of provinces, sometimes at the level of a group of municipalities. And of course, we have a large budget for demonstration projects. Then there's another learning curve I would like to mention here, that's streamlining the value chain. And we're not so good, unfortunately, in Europe at the moment. There's an instrument in place now, the IPSAI, that will help many member states to become more energy independent and get manufacturing back to Europe, including some of the materials needed for renewable energies, but this is, I think, still a very weak point, and with all the dependencies on the worldwide and global economy. Now, these are a few of the regulatory sandboxes. They started in 2016, and they were ended a few years later. Formal reason was that they were getting too big, maybe too successful, and they were encroaching on the legal terrain of grid operators. But I would like to point to another aspects of energy communities. Here's an overview of the initiatives we have. There are over 600 energy communities in the Netherlands, active in most of the municipalities, but then most of them are active in solar, also in wind, and starting is district heating. There's some movement on the political level also for district heating becoming more centralized and in the hands of local governments, moving away from the marketplace, you might say. We're now confronted in general with shortcomings of the current market setup, and there are all kinds of discussions going on. There was no specific policy on energy cooperatives in the Netherlands because in principle the market was free enough for everybody to participate. But as you can see, the total amount of installed capacity of all the energy cooperatives together is just 270 megawatt peak, which is less than 2% of the total installed capacity of solar in the Netherlands in 2021. And that has grown steadily. In the left picture, you can see a division between large systems and smaller systems in blue. Larger systems, they start to become commercially viable as of 2016, and in 2018 you can already see congestion in the grid beginning first in the outer regions, but also in the city regions right now. That means there's a backlog of solar parks. That's the picture on the right. It's not decreasing because the time needed for grid reinforcement is much larger, a few years. And even if you shorten procedure, you will not get under 2 within a year. So that backlog is not going to go away. That will stay with us for the next years until at least is estimated 2030. Then here is a picture of grid congestion in 2021. You can already see going from left to right how it is increasing also in the populous city areas in the west of the country. And that's, I think, the main point and takeaway for today, that if you move towards a new energy system, that the energy communities and may I say local initiatives in general are a essential point to avoid this deadlock of planning procedures and grid capacity. And besides grid reinforcement, we really need to step up our learning curve at this, and RVO is there to help out, sometimes with budgets, but also with getting through this learning curve by sharing experiences and what works and what doesn't.
Starting our discussion, our panel about the renewable energy communities, how energy agencies can help in implementation of these renewable energy communities. So we have several questions for our speakers. It's working? Or? We have several questions for our speaker. I think it's better now. So basically what we are trying to understand is, well, what are the barriers at the moment and how energy communities can help in this energy transition and to fight this energy crisis. So I will make the first question here in the room, and then I think I will pass for our colleagues that are online. So Leonardo, what do you think? How energy communities can help in the energy transition, and what are the barriers and how we can pass through them?
I think they have a very important role in the transition. I think the first thing is that communities are a way of democratizing the energy transition and giving power to the people, or giving the opportunity to the people to participate in this. The articles that are in the Renewable Energy Directive today, Article 22, was a very long process. I don't want to say a fight, but it was a very long process of advocacy of why do you need this article, why do you need to allow communities there. So this is one point, and I think this is a fundamental role, is that the people take the possibility to do their own arrangements for their energy, to share energy with people who do not have it, to help others, and they should have a framework for that. That's one thing. The other thing is, according to the current crisis, I think communities have a role to play in helping with energy poverty. The link is not fully established there, but we have to work on this link because energy poverty is an issue that is increasing substantially in all member states. So people should have the possibility to share energy with other people that cannot afford energy. That's one issue. And communities should also have the possibility to help us with reducing gas consumption and fossil fuel dependency. So that will mean probably that we have to move not only to communities and solar energy, but probably also to heat in some member states. Communities are open to different possibilities. Most of them is solar PV for a number of reasons, but they can. So I think they have a very important role to play. And I think they are a way also of reducing the risk of this price volatility that we see in the markets. We see market mechanisms that are not working anymore, a market model that is not working anymore, that has to be changed. But this is going to take many years, several years of discussions. I think communities could go into, let's say, creating small markets where they can address this issue, and also I think they can offer other services. They could offer services in mobility, in other areas where they can contribute, not only on the electricity, selling, sharing, storing, so I think these are the areas where communities can have a contribution, but they need support now. And as I said in my presentation, the business case is changing. So it's important that they are supported, and they are supported by local authorities, they're supported by national governments, they are supported by the European Commission.
Thank you very much. Sarah, we have a lot of projects, a lot of things going on in Spain. How do you think that energy communities can help? And what do you think you can do more in Spain also?
Mm-hmm. Right. Good. Second chance. It works now as well. I fully agree with what Leonardo was mentioning. And it was said before as well, no? And I think we've shown in those graphs the importance that had the economics, after all, no? And I think the reduction of prices is really important, but I think specifically, furthermore, is where those reduction of prices go to, no? Because you could argue that actually now it's possible to have a individual self-consumption that is going to reduce my energy prices, but is, I think, specifically that emphasis on the just energy transition. that enables, or at least it seems that there is a willingness that these are tools for alleviating energy poverty. And as well, the second part that we've seen that is very interesting in Spain, and the ministry for which we are working is also, it's called the Ministry for Ecological Transition and Demographic Challenges, and that's the fact that rural areas, people are going to big cities. It seems that energy communities have attraction there, and I think it's because, well, there is already a seed, there is already a feeling of community, and there is a space, which is also very important. In a very congested city, you might not have the space, but these spaces, obviously depending on the grid, and there are many technical aspects, but they do have the space, and they are willing to provide some energy. And they are willing as well, as an opportunity to say, well, why shouldn't this be a good place to live or to work if we can provide you cheaper energy prices? No? So I think reduction of prices is fundamental, specifically where to. But it's also true that other aspects that were mentioned are very important. Maybe I can highlight the one on this multi-vector component of the energy communities, and the fact that when those societies are set, and we are already seeing this in the statutes of those communities, it is true that nowadays, because of solar panels, modularity, prices, easiness, that's the first step, but they do have a willingness to go farther, and many of them are already implementing a charging point next to it, or doing some energy efficiency measures. So that comprehensive approach, I think, is something that has to be explored, and it has huge potential, I do believe. On the second aspect, on the barriers that you asked before, and I don't want to go very farther, because also our colleagues might have a very interesting points to highlight, but I just want to take one, because I think we've all talked about municipalities here, and in Spain, we also see that there is a huge amount of interest on municipalities, and there is a particular challenge on capability on energy, on those technical aspects related with the municipalities and the people that work there. So one thing that we are doing towards contributing to resolve that bottleneck somehow is we are launching this one-stop shop scheme right now in order to facilitate that there will be new people that can work in different entities that want to be one-stop shop. It can be a municipality on different levels. And well, I think I should just stop there.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I think Graham is with us. So one of the questions for Graham is also, so we see very interesting projects in Wales, I think, and then also in Scotland. Graham, the same question. How do you think the renewable energy communities can, of course, help in this energy transition, of course, in this crisis that we are living at the moment, in some of the barriers? What do you think we can do or have to do to implement or to have more energy communities?
Yeah, thanks. Hopefully I'm coming through okay now.
I think I'd echo what the other speakers have said and what Leonardo was saying about the two levels. Obviously, one level is about actually reducing our dependence on fossil fuels and our exposure to those prices at a very high level. But at a very practical level, there are a lot of energy communities that are developing models that specifically address energy poverty as well. So I highlighted one of those case studies that was generating a fund for fuel poverty in the area. There's another organisation in the UK that has been buying up a portfolio of commercial PV farms that are already established, but then refinancing those as cooperatives, as citizen-owned cooperatives, and at the same time having a model where those citizen cooperatives develop a community fund to energy poverty in the area. There's another example where, which is a project that we actually funded under the grant scheme that I work on, which is an energy community has set up locally owned PV on social housing that then generates funds that go to support the people that live in the social housing, that gives energy advice, and there's also kind of apprenticeships associated with that as well, that create employment opportunities for local people, and we were able to support them around piloting a model for enabling kind of local supply, so that the energy community could sell direct to the people in the social housing, provide them with discounted energy, but also provide a better business model for the energy community, rather than them having to sell into the wholesale market and then you know, people in the social housing buying direct from an energy supplier. So there are lots of models out there, and I think this has been a bit of a feature in the UK, that there's a lot of innovation and creativity around trying to develop these business models. And I think the thing that we really need in the UK is just a little bit more certainty about what is going to be the future of the energy market and local supply, because the sector has certainly got the creativity to build those business models, but at the minute I think it sometimes feels a bit like they're trying to hit a moving target. That's the challenge I think that the sector's facing.
Thank you very much, Ram. So we know the challenge, we know that consumers in energy poverty, it's one of the challenges here. So I pass now to Otto, I think it's listening to us also, it's with us. So Otto, what do you think are the challenges also, and how do you think the energy communities can help to tackle these challenges?
Right. Thanks for asking that, and I see the same developments as Graham is mentioning, a lot of creativity. The problem is, as I tried to point out in my presentation, is that without local initiatives and energy communities, we're not going to achieve the climate goals. I think you can in the Netherlands already jump to that conclusion, given that grid reinforcement will never catch up, and if you just plot it in time. And so my conclusion would be that for now we always have been racing from traffic light to traffic light and hoping that the next traffic light would be orange or green, and we never had, but in order to make this work, we need all the traffic lights, we need a green wave. And there's no perspective on the long run, say 5 to 10 years even, of what all these barriers are. So we're very good in solving one by one, and then we have, it's stop and go all the time. It's stop and go. That's my... Thanks.
Thank you very much, Otto. So the final question, I will make a question, of course, for all speakers, the final question for all speakers. So basically, it's what we see that the energy agencies can play a role here. So we have already several that we are developing. And I ask you, what do you think can be the added value? You are also, your agencies are working in this subject, so it's something that you are working almost on a daily basis, energy communities. How do you think that what we can do more to implement these energy communities?
Online, can I start?
Yes, no, it's for you. Yes, sorry. So Sarah first.
Yeah, I do think at the moment there are definitely there's a huge interest on energy communities on very different levels. I mentioned before municipalities, they are very interested. We are obviously at the national level. And at the moment, I think it's very important the work that is being done. This, first of all, that support for the legislative framework, which we do not have yet. But then all these schemes and all these case studies that we are building, I think that's really critical. These success stories, we believe will be crucial over the next year in order to be like some reference points for similar organizations or different entities to embrace this model and to participate that way. These are new models that we are building or we are supporting directly with the Next Generation EU funds. However, there are also some existing successful cases of some, for example, historical cooperatives that exist in Spain from maybe almost 100 years of history, and we are trying to disseminate and to make sure that that model, the good elements of that model are well understood for the different parts of the public. So the first one, these pilot cases, and maybe the second part that I started to introduce before is these one-stop shops. It's still to be seen how successful they are. As well, they will come out for these next generation funds, but the main objective of these one-stop shops will be elements that will provide direct dissemination activities on what the concept of energy community is. Second, they will provide assessment on the legal, financial, economic, technical aspect. And as well, they will have some mentoring aspects. This question that you were mentioning before of how do I start? Well, you have a one-stop shop, you can ask them and you can go. So these both elements of first one on actually you have a success study and it's there and a case and it's happening and it's running. And then the second one is more bottom-up is, well, how can we create this environment in which the stakeholders can become interested and somehow can start to address those barriers that we've seen today.
Thank you very much. Leonardo, we know that Austrian Energy Agency, I think you are on the front. We see on the study you have some cases. And what do you think? What are you doing, and what do you think the energy agencies can do also to tackle this and to have more energy?
Yeah, thank you. We have projects on this area where we are engaging with communities in Austria and also communities in other countries. I think it's important. I mean, one issue is the one-stop shop that can provide services. One-stop shop can provide also support with legal aspects. For instance, standard contracts is an issue. I mean, a community may not have a legal advisor, may not be able to afford a legal advisor. So you need to produce standard contracts that they can have a guidance how it should look like. If I talk to the DSOs, how it should look like, the kinds of statutes I have to do with my community and so on. So this is one issue that has to be tackled. Other issues are the models of participation, how to make them clear, you mentioned the tariff calculator. I mean, they have to make it clear to citizens, to local authorities, to other actors. How do I participate? Do I just support the community? Do I get involved? What are my financial benefits? What are my legal benefits? What are my legal risks? This is another issue. The third issue is you have to examine, as Sarah said, the pilots and get lessons learned and disseminate what is working and what is not working. And I think the energy agencies, particularly national energy agencies, have a role to play here to look at these case studies, so to say, exchange also at the international level. And I think there is a role for ENR in doing that. I mean, the study that you have led is going in this direction. Is what is going on in other countries? I mean, is it working for them? Is the one-stop shop in Austria working? What are they doing? What service do we offer? Can we have a similar one-stop shop in other countries? What is not working there? So I think that's important. And one additional issue that I want to mention is that I think the energy agencies can also complement the role of the repositories. I mean, there is a repository for energy communities and also for rural communities that was being created at the EU level, but they have a limited capacity to that. The national agencies can complement the work. This is one thing. One more thing that I wanted to mention is that we have talked about the energy communities at the urban level, but I think we also have to look at the rural level. I mean, at the rural level, there is potential to develop communities, maybe not in the same form that you have in a compact city at the urban level, but they may have other possibilities, access to other kinds of renewable energies that we could tackle. So I think the rural level will also have to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think Graham is still with us. So Graham, you show us, I think, 2 projects. So what is the role of the Energy Saving Trust in these projects? What are you doing regarding the energy communities? Can you talk to us a little bit about the projects and what you are doing?
Work that we do in Wales and Scotland is
we've kind of learned through that process. One is that we have a toolkit that sits alongside the work that we do. So that does some of that work of providing template legal agreements, providing template business plan models, kind of Excel-based business plan models. So all of that that can be useful. And I think the other thing about that, it's almost like a kind of menu approach that we can support people throughout the lifetime of their energy community, means that it helps us to meet the energy communities where they are, because there are some organizations that are, you know, only just evolving from some people meeting around a kitchen table and they've got a good idea, but they're at a very early stage. But equally, you know, there are organizations out there that are more like kind of peers to us. They're very well developed social enterprises with very, very highly qualified people involved. And actually, you know, they might not need the advice side of it, but they can tap into the kind of the grant funding for development process or feasibility or those kinds of things. So that's really helpful. I think another interesting role there is actually in sharing insight with government. So having worked with Welsh and Scottish governments over a long period of time, we've found that they're really receptive, because we work very closely alongside the energy communities. We're able to share insight with them and kind of say, well, look, this is where the real problem is. This is what the challenges are. You know, how about we set up a fund to do this? And actually, we found them very receptive to that. Obviously, you know, within the limitations of budgets and things, but there is that role as a kind of independent advocate, both very specifically on the programs, but also more widely on policy. I think having a slightly independent role, but where we can advocate for communities, is supported, because certainly in the UK, energy communities are very good at representing themselves. And I guess the other last thing that I wanted to say was that we do try to kind of work with energy communities, because, you know, we recognize that they're actually very good at peer-to-peer support. And so we've got people who are experienced in delivering energy communities who work on the program. We've got, you know, on the Welsh program, one who set up the first community wind farm, or that, you know, certainly the largest community wind farm in Wales, works with us on the program to support. And actually, you know, there is something there important about respecting the expertise of the sector and helping that peer-to-peer support, because that's certainly something that has been really powerful in the UK in growing the sector.
Well, I think we all agree, based on the study that we developed, and of course the answers of our colleagues. First, to thank you to Sarah. Sorry, I think my microphone. I think to Sarah, of course, to Leonardo for the presence, of course, and for the presentation, these questions, and also for our colleagues João, and also for the colleagues for the Otto for the presence and for the presentation they have done. So we know that renewable energy communities can play a role in the energy transition. That's still quite a huge effort that we have to do. Quite road ahead of us, but I think the energy agencies can play, of course, an important role here. And I think it's one of the things for the future of energy transition, and of course for having low energy prices. So thank you very much for your presence, and of course I think the first part of the session is closing here. Thank you very much.
Welcome back. To present the project, please welcome the head of the Energy Unit at the Institute of Science and Innovation in Mechanical and Industrial Engineering, Isabel Azevedo. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. And first of all, thank you to ENR and also to ADENE for the invitation and for giving the opportunity to present some of the results of this Comres project, which I guess is just the starting point to new projects and to new developments towards the promotion of renewable energy communities. And also congratulate ENR for the study, because I think it came, actually I felt when Manuel Casquiço was presenting it, that is a kind of validation of what we've also been gathering as knowledge, and there's a lot of validation of what we've been collecting and what we've been finding out throughout these 2 years. So as was said, I will present some of the results from Comres, and Comres is, well, maybe just to give you an overview, so I will just briefly present what is Comres, and then focus mostly on what we found to be the main barriers and drivers for renewable energy communities, and then how this is related with the legal and regulatory frameworks, as well as the overall enabling framework that has been promoted by the different member states. So in terms of the COMRES, it is a European funded project through Horizon 2020, which started already in September 2020. So it's already in its last semester. It will end in February 2023. And we have 16 partners from 9 European countries. And the idea here was really to accompany the transposition of the RED II directive and to facilitate the market uptake of RES by the promotion of renewable energy communities. And doing so by supporting the transposition of the provisions that were associated with this type of, with the renewable energy communities that were foreseen by the RED II. And we've done so in these 9 European countries that are where we have members or partners of the consortium, which are Belgium, Netherlands, Germany, Italy, Latvia, Norway, Poland, Portugal, and Spain. And the idea of having this geographical coverage was not only to have a wide or a diversity of geographical contexts, but also try to capture different technological focus, because as Manuel said, energy communities, even if there is a quite significant focus on solar, there are other contexts where other technologies are also foreseen. And here the idea was really to capture this, because also the barriers and the drivers may be different. And so we try to have this diversity in terms of technological focus, and then also try to have a diversity in terms of the level of experience. This was a way of how we assessed the level of experience or the starting conditions when we started the project. And here what we see is that we have countries with large experience in community energy, even though it was not really renewable energy communities, because this was before the definition of renewable energy communities by the RED II directive. But there were already some of these countries with gathered experience and great knowledge on this type of initiatives, while others were really just with some elements in place, so very few initiatives at the small scale and with the participation of citizens. And so the idea was that the exchange between these two stages of development could also be beneficial to support them in the transposition of the provisions for renewable energy communities. In terms of activities, so we've done some screening and some identification of the main barriers and drivers for the deployment of RECs. Then we also moved to the identification of good and best practices, focusing on different criteria in order to ensure that it was also, we could capture the innovation, transferability, and also the potential for sustainability of these initiatives in other contexts. And then we had different activities focusing on the adaptation and capacity development. When I talk about adaptation, it's adaptation of existing business models and financing instruments. So try to understand how these business models could be adapted to be adequate to renewable energy communities, and to deliver this so that renewable energy communities can have a starting point and understand what type of business models are suitable, and then also try to use all the knowledge that was captured to provide capacity building and support to public authorities and to other stakeholders. We've done also some transfer activities, so this peer-to-peer, this peer learning, which is taking some initiatives that are operational and running and try to bring them to other regions so that the other initiatives that are just starting or are interested, people that are interested in starting these initiatives can learn from existing initiatives and can then promote a transfer of knowledge and transfer of good experiences. And finally, we also, as we are accompanying the transposition and, well, now also try to convert all the knowledge and all the feedback that we had from the different stakeholders into policy recommendations. So, and here it was bidirectional exchange. So we try to also gather some knowledge throughout policy labs on how policymakers, what they are doing, what are they facing as main barriers, but then also try to pass them our feedback and policy recommendations on how they could improve. And in parallel to all of this, we built national country desks, which are basically informal dialogue fora for different market actors and different stakeholders. And this was in all the participant countries. We built a specific country desk to gather, well, first it was coordinated by the national Commerce partners, but then we had the idea of gathering all these different stakeholders, from cooperatives to policymakers to local authorities. So all the relevant stakeholders that are important in the implementation of these initiatives, in order to inform and create an awareness, but also to support and accompany the transposition by bringing policymakers to discuss what are the solutions and what are the problems. And then finally, and this is what we are doing currently, which is to develop action plans for the promotion of RECs in this specific target region. So based on all the knowledge that we gather, what could be specific actions that are needed in specific target regions. And as a result, we aim to strengthen existing RECs and encouraging the development of these REC investments throughout Europe, also to support community actors and in the specific regions by development, peer-assisted training, and also now the regional action plans, and finally inform policymakers and enable improved policymaking by supporting the development of these enabling frameworks. So regarding barriers and drivers, I will go very quickly because I think there is a lot of overlap between the barriers that ENR found within their study as the one we found. I will just go. So first, how we've done it. We've done it in two ways, also to understand the evolution of these barrier and drivers, because as the project started, when the transposition was still in the preliminary stage, it was also important to understand if these barriers were being solved throughout time. So we've done first focus groups interviews with the three groups of key participants that are referred in the directive, so citizens, local authorities, and SMEs. We've done one, for each country we've done one focus group interview per group, and there we try to grasp some of their perspectives in terms of level of involvement that they have or they would like to have in terms of renewable energy communities, what are their main motivations, with whom they think it would be important to cooperate to get a successful energy community, and then also the main barriers and drivers. And this was done in the end of last year. And now this year we've done a more comprehensive online survey which covered all the 9 countries. And here we understood that we could not narrow down to renewable energy communities, so we should have a broader perspective of energy communities, so also including citizen energy communities and other type of community energy initiatives. And then only at the end, we focus specifically on the legal definition of RECs and how the market environment and how they feel that there is a difficulty in implementing. And within this, this survey, we had response from quite a wide, diverse group of potential stakeholders in renewable energy communities, from the communities themselves, from individual citizens, research organizations, NGOs, also industry, DSOs, utilities, and so on. So even though it's still a limited number of respondents, it was already good enough to understand whether the barriers that were identified throughout the focus groups interviews remained in place throughout this year. And the main results were that, well, starting from the positive side, is that mostly all the participants highlighted the potential benefits that these type of initiatives can bring to members and the local community, and they see this as a motivation to start a renewable energy community. However, there are still relevant barriers, and these are really slowing down the implementation of these type of initiatives. And these are associated with the significant delays in the RED II transposition, but also with the lack of success stories, so good practices where we can learn from and can build trust that this is a concept that works, and also the lack of capacity and competence. But then focusing on the positive side, so what they see as main motivation to start this type of initiatives, or to, if we are not talking about a potential member, but also enablers, what they see as a reason to support the development of this type of initiatives. And the main reasons were really associated with the benefits, so the local benefits to the society in terms of environmental factors, so the contribution to have their own contribution towards sustainability and energy transition, and to have this active participation. Then also, of course, and has been said, the financial incentive is always key, and both the focus groups interviews and now the survey were done in a period where we've seen a rise in electricity prices. So here, the already promised reduction in the energy bill took even a greater role, because the energy bill is even higher, and there is also the uncertainty in terms of electricity prices. So they really see this as one opportunity to have more stability and also the decrease on the energy bills. And then also social factors. So the social benefits that are expected from this type of initiatives was also mentioned quite often. And here it's referred the case of vulnerable consumers, but also the case of benefits to the social economy for the local economy, such as creation of jobs and the boost of local economy. And then the barriers, I think I will go very quickly, because as you can see, they are more or less the same as the ones referred in the ENR study, but really the strong ones are the ones on the right, which are associated with the legal and regulatory framework. So again, the lack of clarity in the definition and in the legislation applicable to RECs, and also the lengthy and very complex licensing and certification procedures. And then the organizational factors, which are related with the need for professionalization. When we are talking about citizen initiatives and we need professionalization, this is a very significant barrier. And also, of course, the lack of concrete cases that bring trust, and also the lack of capacity from local stakeholders and potential promoters of this type of initiatives. So how are these barriers and these drivers linked to what has been established within these 9 countries, and how this has been evolving over time? In terms of the definition of RECs, well, most of the countries that we've analyzed, I'm sorry, maybe this is, maybe yes, maybe you can see it. But here what we've seen is that, so we looked at how the different countries looked at the different criteria that were required by the RED II. And what we've seen is that most of them, what they did was almost word-by-word translation of the RED II, which doesn't bring much clarity. So it's true that it's aligned with the RED II directive, but it still brings a lot of doubts for when you really want to build a community, if you don't know exactly what to do. And this means this is in terms of legal form, but also in terms of proximity. But of course, some of the countries have done, so first the direct translation, and then they have been, with subsequent legislation acts, they have been defining more clearly and clarifying some of these criteria, which has been improving. Then more in terms of how to enable this type of initiatives, and this is also part of RED II, there were some obligations in terms of not of creating a non-discriminatory treatment to RECs and how the RECs should be supported. And here we have, so we had the obligation of provide an assessment of barriers and potentials, which I think now ENR has done, but until until now, I think we didn't have, at least for most of the countries, we didn't have a broader study of what are really the barriers and potentials for RECs in the different national contexts. Then there was also the idea that the regulatory and administrative procedures should be aligned or adequate for RECs. And in most cases, well, there has been an effort to simplify, but there's still a lot to be done. And there is also the reference of integration in spatial planning and integration in urban infrastructure planning, the concept of RECs, and how can these two pieces of plans can support the implementation of these initiatives. And this is something that has not been treated by most of the countries that we've looked at. Then there was also the idea that it was necessary to enforce and enable the cooperation with DSOs, to have a transparent cost-benefit analysis in terms of what are the costs and benefits that communities can bring also to the grid. And this also, I guess, most of the countries haven't done. The idea of cost-reflective network charges, and then also the non-discriminatory treatment in terms of market participation. And, well, just give you some examples of what has been done. So, for instance, in Belgium and the Netherlands, there is this idea that DSOs are really required to carry out the transactions required for energy sharing and selling, so that in order to facilitate and allow for renewable energy communities to sell and share their energy. Then there was some effort in creating some specific exemptions or specific incentives in terms of grid tariffs, but this is, so sometimes this could be good examples but in the case of Poland, this is an example of that goes against non-discriminatory treatment, because in Poland only rural areas can build renewable energy communities. So rural and semi-rural areas, not urban municipalities are not allowed. Then in terms of accessibility for all consumers was also implied in the RED II directive, as access to finance and access to information. And this we've seen that access to information is still quite limited and there's still a lack of awareness and lack of information. But some things have been done. I think Sarah has presented Spain, where they have really a comprehensive support in terms of guidance and in terms of financing as well, which accompanies the different stages of development of the RECs. And this is really important because they don't need support only when they are designing, but also throughout implementation and most probably also during the first stages of operation of the REC. And then, of course, there's some effort to start dedicated support schemes in terms of financing. And also, in the case of Latvia, for instance, they are developing dedicated guidelines and specifically focus on public authorities, because they see that there is really a role for them to support this type of initiatives. And finally, in terms of support schemes, there are already, or according to RED II, they were supposed to first consider the specificities of RECs in the already existing or being developed renewable energy sources support schemes, and also to have dedicated support schemes for RECs. There's also the reference to quantitative political targets in order to ensure a long-term commitment from policymakers in the implementation of these initiatives, and then some tax reliefs or reduced network charges. And here the approach from the different member states has been different. So there are really member states who have committed to national or regional targets in terms of RECs implementation, while others have adapted their existing support schemes in order to accommodate some specificities of RECs, while others have developed specific support schemes for RECs. But some things have been done, and there is already, and if we've seen this graph from December 2020, where we had a first overview, this has evolved a lot, and I think this is a good sign. And these are just some examples, but I think so what can still be done? So the main conclusion we got from this this analysis of barriers and drivers and what has been, so this reality check in terms of enabling frameworks, is that we have been advanced, it's true. So there have been advancements since we started the project, but there's still a lot to be done. So we are not there yet. And it was also interesting to see that even though we started with very different positions, so we had countries with large experience in community initiatives and others with very few experience, this was not really what made a difference within to implement this transposition and to advance in terms of renewable energy communities. It's interesting to see that some countries that started in 2019 with a slow and only few elements in place in terms of community energy initiatives have gone quite far now in terms of the transposition and support of the implementation of renewable energy communities. And maybe to end and to give the motto to the discussion afterwards is that indeed we need some fine-tuning in terms of national level for existing energy governance and infrastructure to accommodate these REC specificities, but also here municipalities can play a role. And they can play a role as has been said in the first part, they can play a role as initiators, as facilitators, as members of REC. So they can really have a very different role within the municipality, within the implementation of renewable energy communities. This, I will leave you the additional document so that if you have any curiosity. And just to finish, so in terms of one-stop shops, this is not really a one-stop shop, as was said, that we go there and we find, so we can do all the process for implementing. The idea here is a one-stop shop in terms of information for renewable energy communities. What we've done, this is a result of a joint collaboration between different EU projects where we try to, instead of each of us doing a platform, we've gathered all in a single platform which has the goal of supporting energy community initiatives. And this is continuously developing repository for information where we have also communities can do a test to assess which stage of development there are, and then they will have access to information according to this stage of development. So if they are only in the design stage, they can have access to information specifically to how to design, what to do at this moment. But then if they are already implementing or if they are already in operation, they can have access to different documents and different supporting tools. So just, I think I will end here. So just to give you this idea, here also we have specific best practices. So there's also a map, a kind of repository of best practice, and once you are within the platform, you can also communicate with these initiatives and ask them questions and try to learn. So this is really to foster peer learning. And yeah, so
thank you,
just
Isabel.
check it out. Thank you.
This is a great setup for the panel discussion now. We will now get to know from specific realities on the ground with this panel in which Isabel will also participate. To moderate the panel, please welcome on stage from the Portuguese Association of Energy Law, Margarida Ramires, our moderator today. Joining us online, we have Sara Giovannini, Communications and EU Policy Manager at Energy Cities, Filipe Araújo, the Vice President of the Municipality of Oporto, Eugenia Bonifazi, the Coordinator of the European Commission's Rural Energy Communities Advisory Hub, in Lisbon, Ana Rita Antunes from Copernico, who is the country expert for the European Commission's Energy Communities Repository, and Isabel Azevedo from INEGI.
So again, thanks a lot for allowing me to present our association and the work that Energy City does in the framework of energy community support. So for those of you who don't know Energy Cities, we are a network of local authorities, municipalities, and association of local governments. We have been working for around 30 years in different different issues related to renewables, and more recently we expanded our topics, creating hubs, communities of members, to really activate, empower, and inspire local leaders towards a climate neutral Europe. Energy Cities hubs that we launched this year are linked to different topics. So it's we have a hub that is dedicated to local governance, another one that is dedicated to fossil-free district and building, one on citizen energy for massive renewable energy production, one on food system and land policy, and another one that is about resource-wise and socially just local economies. And I am here today as hub coordinator for the community-led energy for massive renewable energy production hub, which is supposed to provide cities with tools to increase their locally owned renewable energy production. And it's in the framework of this hub that Energy Cities does different activities to support the development of community energy in Europe at local level. So we do advocacy and create dialogue between the different actors. We do a lot of information sharing and capacity building, and are part of different projects through which we allow our members, we allow our member cities to access funding to test a new solution. In terms of what we do specifically for supporting energy communities development, there are many things, but because of lack of time, I decided to highlight only a couple of them that I think are important. First, it's the Energy Community Repository that you've already heard before from the presentation of the Austrian colleague. Energy Cities is part of this Energy Community Repository, which is an initiative of the European Commission to assist local authorities with setting up clean energy projects that are specifically driven by energy communities in urban areas. I think this is very timely because this technical assistance call is open for communities and local actors to apply until the end of the year. So I thought it would be nice to mention this, the community today. Another thing is our paper that we published recently. It's about, it's called Renewable for All, where we call for local renewable energy for all Europeans. And this paper highlights the need for energy education to ensure participation in a fair energy system. I think this is very relevant in terms of barriers. Education is a big one, as you heard before. So yes, this paper is a good resource that we are pushing currently to really campaign for a more fair energy system. And another things that we are currently doing is a campaign. Indeed, local authorities, especially the smaller one, they need staff, human resources to achieve their climate and energy objective, which include, of course, community energy. And the lack of human resources is one of the barriers at a local level towards the development of community energy projects. So we have this campaign, and we are currently still looking for signatories to call for more means for local authorities. And you can join the campaign through your organization. To really push for more staffing means for a climate and energy transition. And another thing that we do is really practical support. We published recently different guides, and more are to come in the following months Together with RESCOP EU and Friends of the Earth Europe, we published some, in 2020, guide. It's called Community Energy, a practical aiming power. And it's a sort of step-by-step document that guides you through towards the development of an energy community project. It's a very useful document that includes plenty of best practice from the ground. As a follow-up this year, so this is a kind of a brand new resource, together with RESCOP EU, we developed a community energy communication guide too, because we realized that most often there is a lack of how to engage stakeholders at local level around this topic, and so we thought that this community energy communication guide was a useful tool to support this kind of the communication around community energy project at local level. And here again, it includes plenty of advice that it's mainly for local authorities and activists that want to start a project at local level. And finally, the guide that is about to be published, it will be in December. It's a guide dedicated specifically to municipality. And here it's, again, a doc analyzed the different roles that municipality can have and that were mentioned already before. And we try to see if there are new roles that can also be taken by the municipality, and aggregated a very large number of examples from municipalities in Europe, especially medium and small municipalities that are doing a great job in setting up or supporting or facilitating a community energy project on their territory. So thank you. These are just some of the activities, and I look forward to share more in the roundtable discussion.
Thank you. We move now to the Vice Mayor of Porto, Filipe Araújo.
So thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. It was very good to listen to Isabel Azevedo and congratulate her for the presentation. It's a pleasure to be with the other members of the panel. I will try to explain a little bit what Porto has been doing in this topic. That is, I think, one of the reasons that we can hope for a change in the paradigm of energy and the usage of energy in the cities. So, first of all, let me start by saying that we know that to achieve the targets that we have, the ambitious targets that we have, and Porto has the target of being carbon neutral by 2030, we have to do it with all the people, all the stakeholders in the city. That's why we launched the Porto Climate Pact. We have more than 200 organizations already signed the pact, and it's a way of going to the carbon neutrality. Right now, Porto is around 52% of decrease in greenhouse emissions in 2020, the last values that we have. So we hope that we accomplish that, although the municipality itself only accounts for 6% of these emissions. So we need to bring everyone together. The role of municipalities is very important, and Isabel has already mentioned that. We have a large number of buildings that most of the municipalities have. We have a huge amount of rooftop areas available still in the cities. We still have to deal with the efficiency, and especially in Portugal, we know that we still have a lot of problems, especially with energy poverty. And so we can contribute definitely to change the paradigm, to have clean energy transition, but also we believe that this decentralized renewable energy production is the way to move forward. So that's why we put so much effort on the energy communities and many other actions that we have to deal. And definitely the cities can lead by example. That's another important issue. Regarding the municipality of Porto, we are, in terms of Portugal, we are not, or we are different from all the municipalities in Portugal. We have 13% of the housing of the cities of the city, which is not comparable because the average in Portugal is 2%. And what we will try to do in the next years, is to provide around on all these rooftops that we have to produce around 6 megawatt of energy or capacity, and to start producing the energy for the social housing that we have there, where we have a lot of people living. So we believe that 1/3 of the electricity can be produced locally. How are we doing that? We are trying to find ways of financing these pilots and to test solutions. One of the things that we are doing right now with one of the social neighborhoods is this project. This project is a combination of several stakeholders, and we are working specifically on building. We already have these panels installed in the top of the buildings, so we are already producing the energy. Right now, we are going to install the batteries. So we are talking about more than 180 houses there, or flats, together with a school that is nearby. So we are testing right now the full range of what a renewable energy community can be, trying to figure out the financing, all the tax and many other issues that we have still to deal, more legal issues than these others, to put the panels on top of the buildings. That's this part. The rest is the most difficult, to be honest, to achieve this and to provide this cheaper solution for the energy to these people that need. Leading by example means what? Means that several of the problems that Isabel already mentioned are to be dealt by cities. So what we want to do is, and we already have this, is we have an open door in our in the place where everyone goes to deal with the municipality issues. You can go also to deal with energy issues, and we will provide all the consultancy to efficiency, or even to produce your own energy, or even to start energy community. So we have an open shop, a one-stop shop, that is a physical building also, but also a virtual building, that we are already providing all the necessary information for people to deal with this new type of energy, so new types of financing, the new opportunities that they have. And here I stress this point because I believe this is one of the parts that we need to focus. We need to understand that the literacy on energy is very low on people, and we have to provide them the ways to deal. It's not a matter of money. Most of the times the people even have the money to put their own solar panels. They don't know how to do it. They don't understand how to build an energy community. And even for us, it's difficult. Imagine for the rest of the population. So we are, of course, working on many other projects regarding production of energy, on all the usage of electric energy, besides our vehicles, besides also having LED all over the city, besides only buying renewable energy. So we want to lead by example. We want to contribute to the energy and climate goals that we have. And definitely cities have an important role into it. So I try to stick with my 5 minutes. I hope I could do it not to damage the rest of the panel. Thank you.
Vice Mayor, we now move to the Rural Advisory Hub with a presentation by Eugenia Bonifazi.
So thank you. I'm Eugenia Bonifazi. I'm the coordinator of the Rural Energy Community Advisory Hub. So with this presentation, I just wanted to give you a little bit of an overview on what is this European initiative from the European Commission, and what are we doing with this project and with this initiative. So the Rural Energy Community Advisory. So first of all, what is the rural energy communities? So we have discussed it already quite in depth during the previous presentation. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but it's basically our energy communities that are located in the rural area. So they might face different challenges, different barriers, but they also have other possibilities because of maybe they have a larger space they can use, and different type of technology can also implement, and not only solar, which is as we use technology particularly when we talk about energy community in urban areas. So why are they important? So there are lots of drivers to build an energy community in rural area. This could be the active participation of local authorities, the ensuring the rural areas are not left behind. There are operationalization of local development plans and input to common agriculture policy, rural development and farm modernization. But on the other hand, there are also lots of challenges that rural energy community will face in this area. Physical constraints and interconnectivity limits might be higher than in urban areas. Social economic barriers, technical barrier, knowledge sharing. These areas are often more difficult to get approached or making sure that they know about this activity and get them involved and engaged in these activities. And also, exactly, engagement with the right actor or institution might be a little bit more difficult. So what is the Rural Energy Community Advisory Hub and what do? We are trying to help to tackle some of these barriers through different activities. So we have a dedicated website and there is a link on the presentation. And what we do through our activities is the identification of best practices, which are published on our website, to see what other realities have done in rural area and try to help other community to learn more about the possibilities and maybe have more knowledge and learn more from other experience. Then development of guidance documents. So we are also developing guidance documents which are published on our website, and we provide technical assistance to selected energy communities and also provide network opportunities for knowledge sharing and making sure that other people can also learn from the experience of other realities. So in terms of the identification of best practices, I gave you an example of 2 best practices that we have identified. The project started around 9-10 months ago. So we have identified 2 best practices. One is the Bad Heidelberg community in Germany, and one is the French communities. And we have developed documents that shared all their experience, all their knowledge, and how they can be inspiring for other realities. There is also here a link to the website where this document can be developed. We have also developed 2 guidance documents. Well, actually 3 guidance documents are available on the website. One is joining or creating value and engaging citizens in the energy transition, and obtaining and managing financing for rural energy community. These are 3 startup guides, what we call them. So they are quite short, quite engaging, and we have wrote them just for the wider public, for everyone that wants to learn more, because one of the barriers, as we heard, is that people don't really know what is an energy community, what are the benefits the energy community can bring, how you go and start an energy community. So these are 3 little guidance documents that contains a lot of example and lots of reference to other documents like the one that have just been presented from the previous speakers. So there are lots of links to other resources, but also they are quite easy to digest, easy written in a very engaging way to try to really inspire more people to learn more and then go into more detail and depth knowledge through the through the mechanism they are existing in their own countries, because every country, as we've seen, is tackling these aspects slightly differently. Then what we also do, we provide technical assistance. So there is currently a call where everyone can apply to receive technical assistance. So the technical assistance will be provided to a selected number of rural energy communities, and it will be given as expert time. So anyone can submit their request, their application for technical assistance. And we provide technical assistance on 5 areas, which are the barriers that I think have been identified from the previous project as well. So investment and financial advice, technology and system-related advice, legal regulatory support, communication support, capacity development, and knowledge transfer support. So as I said, this is not money, it is not a fund that we can give, but it's technical assistance provided as expert time. To do that, we have a network of experts that can cover every single member state. So legal and regulatory support, of course, will change based on which member state the energy community is sitting in. So we have experts in every single member state that can provide this support for the energy communities. So the application is still open. It's open until the end of the year, the 31st of December. So there is time to apply. It can be submitted in any of the recognized or official languages in Europe, and also there are guidance documents. There is a guidance note that explains exactly how to do the application form, and also these notes, this little booklet are provided in every language. So we really try to make, because also we are speaking to rural areas, we know the language English could be a barrier, particularly for some member states. So we really try to make it easier for everyone to apply by allowing every single language to be used. The other things that I just wanted to mention is that, as I said, we have a network of experts, but the way that we are finding these experts is just asking people to join our network. So together with the technical assistant calls, we've also opened a call for experts. Everyone here that has experience, it could be an existing energy community, it could be a legal expert in the energy area, it could be a technical expert. If you have any capability on any of the 5 areas where we are supporting and providing technical assistance, you are encouraged to submit your CV. Then based on the technical assistant of the application that will be selected, we will do a matchmaking exercise between the experts and the needs. And obviously the expert will be recognized for their support, so we will do small contract with them, and there will be a fee that will get paid based on the support. So it's important that we are building a really large network. We have more than 100 applicants, so we are really building a big support, but we want to make sure that we have all the experience and all the knowledge for all the member states. So if there is someone that knows, or you could apply, or someone else that could give support, please feel free to reach out and submit your CV. And then in January, when we will select the communities that will receive technical assistance, we will also do this matchmaking exercise, and you will hear from us if your expertise will be needed for the delivery of this technical assistance.
Now, Ana Rita, it's your turn.
So I'm Ana Rita Antunes from Copernico. For those of you that doesn't know Copernico yet, we are energy cooperative in Portugal. We are the first energy cooperative in Portugal. We have 2,500 members. We produce solar energy in decentralized way, and we supply energy also. So with a little bit of luck, maybe we can be the first energy community, citizens energy community in Portugal also. And we are members of ResCoop, and in this moment, Copernic is also member of the board of ResCoop. I'm here today to talk about Energy Community Repository, and my colleagues that talked before me, they present all the both initiatives that are twin, so the Energy Community Repository and the Rural Energy Community. The background, you know already, the background of these initiatives. So we have the Clean Energy for All European package, and in the end, we have this standard launched by European Commission to help some countries to develop more energy communities in Europe. So the consortium of this project is led by ResCoop, that is the Federation of Energy Cooperatives in Portugal, in Europe, and Energy Cities. And what we are going to do is to make policy analysis, mapping and impact assessment. And these first two activities will be managed by ResCoop and Energy Cities, and technical assistance is where the national experts like Copernic are working. So mapping and policy analysis, we know that there is some 8,000 energy communities around Europe, and more than 1,000 of them are members of ResCoop, but we need to map them and to see how they are working. And that work is somehow being done for several projects, but now the idea is to put all together in one single map. And then assess the impact of energy communities in this framework. And then also what we are going to do is to make a policy analysis of these energy communities, including an analysis of enabling frameworks, that it's very important. What are being done to enable frameworks for energy communities to show up. So the technical assistance is where Copernic is working in Portugal, and we are going to give, well, we are not going to give technical support for 25 communities. We are going to give technical support for the communities that will apply for support in Portugal, and we are going to do some online training and peer learning, and we are supporting one guy in Coimbra that wants to start energy community in Coimbra, so it's our first project. And in the end, we are going to organize national capacity buildings workshops also, well, one physical and the other online. Yeah, and so the technical assistance for us, the communities, we really want to help the citizens that want to start an energy community. It's not so much about companies or industrial places. We want to help the citizens to start and to help citizens to know how to do it. And for us, a legal entity for renewable community. Yeah, or it's so we have these two types of energy communities, and one is renewable energy communities, and the other is the citizens' energy communities. Of course, in Portugal, I guess we are going to help the citizens to start collective self-consumption projects, and then have this field to create their own renewable energy community. But I believe we are going to start from the small projects of collective self-consumption, even though Copernic is helping Paris to settle a renewable energy community. So these are the focus countries, because they were identified as countries with less energy communities in place, and Portugal is one of them. And so, as my colleague said before, we are you can, if you know citizens of, or if one of you wants to start an energy community in your neighbor, please apply or share the word. And well, I've been talking for more than 3 minutes. So, in the end, we are all talking about one-stop shop that we need to do. We are talking about toolbox to enable framework for energy communities. And that's it. Thank you. And let's talk.
Thank you, Ana Rita. Even with the grace period gave by the president of ADENE, the time has finished, okay? So, but all the questions that I have for you, for the speakers, are already answered by the excellent presentations that you have done. So, to finalize, I just want to say that in Portugal, I think that the problem is not in the legislation. We have the main legislation necessary to implement the project. What we need is to change our mindset, the mindset of the public entities that they need to understand that the RECs and the citizen communities and the collective auto-consumption are essential and good for the country and for the planet. All of us need to be prosumers instead of consumers. And I'm not talking only about JEC and the grid operator. I'm talking about other players, other entities, such as the municipalities, because as we have Oporto and other municipalities involved in the creation of RECs, we have also municipalities that don't have no idea of such type of consumption, of energy consumption. We have master plans, municipality master plans, that don't allow the implementation of solar panels in several places. They need to change the master plans. I have one master plan to be changed since 2019 in order to allow the implementation of this project, and nothing is done. For the side of the citizen, we also need to change our mindset, because the Portuguese, we don't have the spirit of community. So even to implement an auto-consumption in a building, it's difficult to have everybody sitting around the table and to agree to implement the project. We need also to find ways to guarantee the loans granted by the banks. This is also a problem. If one big bank is going to put money in a REC, how can they guarantee the payment of the loans? With bank guarantees, I think it's not possible for a community. With mortgage, doesn't make sense. So we need to think in this type of problems and barriers that I think it's now need to be fight. And to finalize, the grid capacity. We don't have capacity on our grid to implement the auto-consumption. So it is fundamental to create capacity, and it is only fundamental to have the ordinance with the grid capacity for the auto-consumption. Shall we have it until the end of the year? It's what the Decree Law 15/2022 says. I don't know, but we need it as up. Thank you, everybody. I don't know if you want to say anything, and Rita, Isabel, I give the floor to the president.
Well,
okay.
Thank you then for the motivating panel. The lack of time means that we need to have more discussion on this topic and more events like this that can further the discussion. So we come to the end of the session, just taking the opportunity to thank all the speakers and also the over 250 participants joining us online. All the presentations and the video will be made available in the next few days, so stay tuned and follow the European Energy Network on social media. So for closing remarks, now we welcome on stage the President of ENR and ADENE, Nelson Lage.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you very much, Margarita, for the quick panel. I just want to start. I'll add 2 minutes to the 3 minutes that all the speakers had, so it's a 2 minutes bonus. But I'll promise to finish very quickly. I just would like to start thanking, of course, to ENR energy agencies, who participated in this important study on policy and implementation of renewable energy communities across Europe, a study that was coordinated by ADENE's team under the ENER Portuguese presidency, who during this year dedicated a large part, really a big and large part of their time preparing and developing as well the final report that we presented here today, with the final conclusion that we're going to share online in the following hours or even probably 1 or 2 days. This study focused on, as it was said, on how implementation can be fostered by energy agencies on the ground, both at the policy making and project implementation levels, and also what is the current legislation at European level and how the implementation is taking place at the European member states. A first conclusion. The first conclusion is that although most countries have already transposed the Renewable Energy Directive, a substantial number have not yet carried out their legislative transpositions. And that transposition of Renewable Energy Directive was key to set up the framework to deploy renewable energy communities. We know that some are facing several problems related to grid management. We also know that the technical and bureaucratical issues can be challenging. We know that is not an easy process, but we also know it can give and will give an important and decisive contribution to relieving the current energy crisis, strengthening the energy transition goals, and alleviating energy poverty. We also analyze the current solution to support renewable energy communities, as well as ensuring the dissemination to promote consumer adoption. It is really important to ensure that there are a robust support or financing mechanism available to citizens, to small business, to local authorities, but also tax incentives and financial tools that can also come from the private sector, such as banking and investment institutions. Technical support and personalized support lines are also referred in this study as fundamental for the success of REC, the Renewable Energy Communities. And this is a topic where we, the energy agencies, national energy agencies, can really play a role. But this study identified several obstacles and barriers that have so far prevented the implementation of renewable energy communities in some countries. We found that the current centralized models, which have been developed over the last few years, take time to be changed, and that the legislative changes are not easy to implement immediately. One of the observed issues is related to the licensing process, already mentioned today by the Secretary of State and other speakers. In some cases are complex and which discourage citizens and organizations from starting the process. So it's really necessary to simplify the process for creating renewable energy communities. We need to really speed up and simplify all procedures to overcome this natural inertia when something new arises. Yesterday, the European Union energy ministers agreed on the content of a council regulation laying down a temporary framework to speed up, to accelerate the permit granting process and deployment of renewable energy projects among the European member states. This regulation will introduce urgent and targeted measures that address specific technologies and types of projects which have the highest potential for quick deployment and the least impact on the environment. We really need to use this opportunity and make renewable energy communities a vehicle for renewables deployment. So we really need to simplify and we really need to speed up the implementation. The study also confirms that the business models adopted and solutions are very similar among the various countries, with slight changes in some of the countries, but this means there are common pathways to be taken and there is room to collectively improve. To learn and replicate best practice, it's also a possibility that we found out. And the European Energy Network can be and will be, is already and will be a platform for this learning process. This reality, so different from country to country, shows that today we cannot have a common implementation model. It's not possible, but we can, and we did. We collected information on 36 case studies, examples of renewable energy communities projects, implementation in several countries. Now, with this publication of this report, we can use that information, we can share that information, and we can leverage success factors and also remove barriers, but certainly to move faster towards our common goals, because we will we will be building upon lessons learned with our peers. In our understanding, this report also supports the identification of the different pathways for the implementation of renewable energy communities and how energy agencies can play a fundamental role in this process, like the Secretary of State said in the opening speech. So, dear all, the current geopolitical and energy market context require a drastic, I think it's the best expression, a drastic acceleration towards clean energy. We know that as citizens, we know that as companies, as institutions, it's really more than clear. We really need to accelerate towards clean energy. And renewable energy communities present an excellent opportunity, basically to deliver affordable zero carbon energy, and also they have also a wide application covering almost all sectors of activity, which is an inspiring motivation and opens multiple replications opportunities for everyone. So it's true that there are still obstacles for renewable energy communities implementation. Not all energy agencies are involved in this process, but we can certainly change this, as energy agencies are uniquely positioned to do this. They are well positioned. Of course, one things that we are really sure that today and tomorrow, energy agencies such as ADENE, that are central, that are aggregator organizations in the energy sector, can be enablers, can be promoters, and can be disseminators of renewable energy communities, fostering their increased adoption as a powerful tool for the energy transition. So once again, thank you very much to everyone. Thank you to the speakers, the moderators. Thank you to the representative of the European Commission, Paula Pinho, to the Secretary of State of Environment and Energy. Thank you. Mainly thank you to all of those involved in this report from the different agencies and also, of course, from ADENE's team. Thank you very much, and thank you for coming.
The European Energy Network thanks you for attending today's event. We hope to see you again soon.